Most people think organizations like the Null Horizon Authority survive because of secrets. That's only half true. The other half is structure. You can hide files, you can bury evidence, you can erase witnesses. But none of that matters unless you have people who can move when something breaches containment, when a town goes dark, when an artifact vanishes, or when a thing that should not exist starts moving toward the public. That is where strike teams come in. Today, I'm breaking down how the Zaneverse NHA strike teams work. I'm talking about the actual field structure, the command chain, the team designations, the specializations, the psychology behind how these units are built, and why the average person has no idea how close they've come to an NHA operation without ever realizing it. Because if you understand the strike teams, you understand how the NHA projects force into the unknown. When people hear the phrase strike team, they usually imagine a generic military unit with better guns and darker uniforms. That's not what this is. A strike team is a specialized anomaly response unit trained to operate in environments where the rules are unstable. Their job is not just combat. In fact, combat is often the least complicated part of what they do. A strike team might be deployed to contain a roaming Xeno before the public sees it, recover an artifact from a compromised site, escort a hazardous object across multiple jurisdictions, shut down a nullbreak class event before it escalates, enter a deep zone beneath the earth or beneath the ice, or secure a location where reality itself has started to degrade. These are not police units or conventional soldiers, and they are definitely not heroes in the way movies like to frame them. They are purpose-built response instruments. Every agent on a strike team is selected for a reason. Their psychological tolerance, environmental conditioning, reaction speed, hazard profile, and adaptability all matter. You don't just need people who can shoot straight. You need people who can keep moving when the walls are breathing, when time goes wrong, when language stops working, or when a Xeno starts speaking directly into the human nervous system. That's why the NHA doesn't build one universal team and send them everywhere. It builds a system. And once you see the scale of that system, you start to understand how deep this organization really runs. At the top of the tactical chain sits the Supreme Strike Commander, or SSC. They report directly to the Apex Directorate. The SSC is stationed at Tundra Station, the oldest and most important NHA facility in the world. That position carries global tactical authority. Every strike force, every deployment doctrine, every large-scale response framework eventually traces back to that office. Below the SSC are the Regional Strike Force Commanders, or SFCs. Each major hub has one, and each of those commanders oversees the strike teams assigned to 2 designated outposts. Based on the established field structure, the hub-to-outpost breakdown looks like this. Sable Meridian oversees Outpost 8, and Outpost 9, Warden's Crown, oversees Outpost 3, and Outpost 4, Red Spire. Anchor oversees Outpost 5 and Outpost 6. Kansai Threshold oversees Outpost 7 and Outpost 10. Tundra Station oversees Outpost 1 and Outpost 2. That means every major hub acts like a command spine. It doesn't just exist as a facility, it exists as a regional nerve center. Orders come down, deployments go out, teams rotate, evaluations are logged, and every mission becomes part of a larger operating picture. So already what you have is not a handful of secret squads. You have a network, a global one. So how many teams are there? Each outpost maintains 12 strike teams, always 12. Those teams are labeled Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf, Hotel, India, Juliet, Kilo, and Lima. That means each outpost fields 12 tactical units, and with 10 primary outposts in the network, that creates a force of 120 total strike teams. That number matters, because once people hear secret organization, they tend to picture something small. A hidden bunker, a few scientists, a few black vans. That's not what this is. 120 strike teams means the NHA is built for sustained global response. It can operate on multiple fronts at once. It can lose one team to a containment disaster and still maintain regional readiness. It can deploy one squad for retrieval, another for suppression, another for escort, and keep reserve units on standby in the same command structure. This isn't an improvised force. It's an ecosystem. The naming convention is simple once you understand it. The alphabet designation tells you the team category. The number tells you the outpost they belong to. So Alpha 1 is Alpha Team assigned to Outpost 1. Bravo 1 is Bravo Team assigned to Outpost 1. Juliet 8 is Juliet Team assigned to Outpost 8. Lima 9 is Lima Team assigned to Outpost 9. That pattern continues across the entire network. So when somebody says Hotel 2, that already tells leadership exactly where that team sits in the organizational structure. It tells them the outpost, it hints at the unit's expected role, and it instantly narrows down the kind of deployment profile that team is likely built for. Simple systems are powerful systems. The NHA likes structures that can be understood in 1 second during a crisis, because when alarms go off, nobody has time for poetry. Now, let's talk numbers on the team level. A strike team is not always the same size. Depending on mission profile, casualty history, psychological attrition, and outpost staffing pressure, a team can range anywhere from 8 to 14 agents, but 12 is the sweet spot. 12 gives the NHA balance. It's large enough to support layered operations: point entry, rear security, recon, communications, medic coverage, technical support, containment handling, and transport security. At the same time, it's small enough to move efficiently through underground corridors, deep-sea insertion points, frozen caverns, urban recovery zones, and compromised facilities. Too small, and the team loses redundancy. Too large, and mobility starts to break down. 12 is where the unit feels complete. And in practice, those 12 agents are rarely all identical in function. Even in a team with a primary designation, individuals are chosen to complement the likely mission profile. A Delta team still needs medics. A Juliet team still needs entry support. A Lima team still needs someone who can keep communications alive when the terrain kills signal. The designation tells you the team's center of gravity, not the entirety of its skill set. That's a very important distinction. Now we get into the part people always want to know. What is the difference between the teams? Officially, the alphabet labels indicate order more than specialty. But internally, the NHA absolutely associates each team with common operational roles. Here's how that breaks down. Alpha, primary response and crisis entry. Alpha teams are usually your fail-safe unit. They breach, they enter. They make the executive decisions in unstable conditions. When something has just gone wrong and command needs boots through the door before the situation snowballs, Alpha goes first. They are fast, aggressive, and highly disciplined under pressure. Bravo, containment support. Bravo teams reinforce and stabilize. If Alpha creates the opening, Bravo helps secure the result. They assist with barriers, capture procedures, field restraints, transport prep, and secondary containment infrastructure. If an anomaly needs to go from active threat to controlled asset, Bravo is often in the middle of that transition. Charlie, recon and tracking. Charlie teams specialize in pursuit, pattern recognition, movement analysis, and off-site location work. If something leaves the perimeter, disappears into terrain, or starts behaving like it understands pursuit tactics, Charlie is who you send. They are patient units, analytical, quiet, often underestimated. Delta, heavy tactical intervention. Delta is brute force when brute force is actually necessary. They handle the most violent and resistant field entries, siege-style extractions, and hostile containment situations where negotiation has already failed or was never possible. Delta is not subtle, and that is the point. Echo. Environmental and hazmat echo teams are built for contaminated, unstable, toxic, or biologically compromised environments. Gas, spores, pressure zones, radiation analogs, xeno residue, corrosive runoff, atmospheric instability. That's echo territory. Without Echo, half the NHA's recovered spaces would remain inaccessible. Foxtrot, long-range communications, signal recovery. Foxtrot keeps the organization connected where normal systems die. They recover signal, establish relays, interpret degraded transmissions, and maintain long-distance operational awareness across hostile terrain. And in anomaly work, signal failure is often the first sign that the mission is about to get ugly. Golf means engineering and demolition. Golf handles structural intervention. That can mean breaching walls, collapsing tunnels, stabilizing compromised sectors, disabling anomalous machinery, or building field solutions under pressure. Where most teams see obstacles, Golf sees materials and angles. Hotel, medical field support. Hotel teams are medics, trauma specialists, and biological triage personnel, not just bullets and broken bones. They deal with burns, neurotoxic exposure, xenocontamination, cognitive destabilization, and injuries that don't exist in civilian textbooks. In some missions, hotel is the reason anyone comes home at all. India, high-risk escort and artifact transport. India handles movement, artifacts, dangerous evidence, volatile material, high-risk prisoners. Anything that cannot be allowed to disappear in transit usually ends up under India protection. They are built for convoy stress, ambush response, relocation secrecy, and transfer integrity. Juliet, cognitive hazard suppression. Juliet teams deal with the threats that attack perception, memory, belief, thought patterns, and mental stability. Memetic hazards, influence fields, compulsions, identity drift, signal-based corruption. Juliet units are not just tactical, they are conditioned differently, screened differently, in some cases damaged differently. They fight things you cannot always see. Kilo, cold climate expeditionary unit. Kilo teams operate in freezing environments, glacial sectors, polar zones, and sub-zero anomaly regions. They are designed for survival, where normal teams burn through energy just trying to stay alive. This matters more than people realize, because some of the oldest and most dangerous NHA discoveries sit beneath ice. Lima, deep zone operations. Lima is built for underground, subglacial, and other buried operational theaters, deep tunnels, subterranean vaults, buried ruins, pressure-heavy descent routes, hidden sectors beneath the known world. When the mission goes down instead of forward, Lima becomes essential. And yes, some of the worst things the NHA has ever found were not in the sky, not in the sea, but under our feet. One of the biggest misconceptions is that each team designation only performs one kind of mission. That would be a disaster. In reality, specialization tells you what a team is best at, not all it can do. An Alpha team may still be required to hold containment. A Juliet team may need to enter a structure under fire. A Lima team may need engineering support. A Delta team may have to escort an artifact until India can take over. Real NHA operations are layered. They overlap. And on major incidents, multiple strike teams can be deployed together under a single operational umbrella. You might see Alpha for entry, Bravo for containment support, Echo for environmental control, Hotel for medical stabilization, and Juliet on standby if the anomaly begins affecting cognition. That kind of deployment is where the NHA becomes most dangerous, because the system allows multiple specializations to lock together like gears. You're probably wondering how the agents are selected. Not every NHA agent becomes strike team material, and not every strike team agent can serve on every team type. Selection depends on a combination of physical capability, tactical performance, psychological resilience, exposure tolerance, mission history, and how the agent behaves under prolonged uncertainty. That last one is critical. A person can look excellent on a range. They can ace a drill. They can dominate a live fire course, and then completely fall apart when faced with a Xeno that speaks in the voice of their dead mother. The NHA tests for that. They monitor fear response, compartmentalization, recovery speed, decision-making after exposure, susceptibility to influence, fixation patterns, sleep degradation, obedience under cognitive strain. This is not a normal military pipeline. It is closer to psychological engineering with a rifle attached to it. And yes, that leaves scars. According to the field structure, all strike teams undergo quarterly psychological evaluations, exposure training, and hazard adaptive conditioning based on anomaly class exposure levels. That phrase sounds clinical. It means the NHA constantly tunes its teams to survive what they've seen. Psychological evaluations are not there just to protect the agent. They're there to protect operational integrity. The NHA needs to know who is still stable, who is beginning to drift, who is hiding contamination, who is becoming emotionally compromised, and who might break during the next deployment. Exposure training familiarizes agents with controlled hazard contacts so they don't freeze in the field. Hazard adaptive conditioning is even more serious. That's where the organization modifies training protocols based on what kinds of anomalies a unit is expected to encounter. A Juliet team conditions differently from a Kilo team. An Echo unit does not prepare the same way as a Delta entry force. Over time, teams become shaped by what they survive. And that creates a truth the NHA rarely says out loud. The longer a strike team stays active, the less human its operational mindset tends to become. Not because they become monsters, because normal instincts are not enough for the work. A good strike team is not made of 12 action heroes. It is made of trust. The best teams don't move like individuals. They move like a machine that has already rehearsed disaster in 100 different forms. They know how each other think. Who pushes too hard? Who hesitates? Who notices things others miss? Who can be trusted to carry the weird call when logic stops being useful? The NHA wants competence, but field commanders value rhythm. A team with average talent and perfect cohesion will survive longer than a team full of elite performers who don't trust each other. That's part of why strike teams develop reputations inside outposts. Some become known for clean extractions, some for low casualty counts, some for impossible recoveries, some for coming back with fewer people than they left with. Teams build identities, and those identities matter, because in a world where every mission can become your last, people don't just trust protocol, they trust the team next to them. The NHA didn't build this system because it loves order. It built it because the world is too unstable without it. That's the uncomfortable part. The public likes to imagine secrecy as a moral failure. And many times, it is. I would know. I've seen what they buried. But the raw reason a system like this exists is because human civilization is thinner than people think. You're never that far from the edge. A buried chamber opens. A signal spreads. An artifact wakes up. A thing in the ice starts moving. A pressure zone beneath the ocean floor changes shape. A single containment mistake becomes a regional disaster. Strike teams are the barrier between that world and the one people think they live in. That is why they exist. That is why there are so many of them. And that is why the NHA invests so much into making them precise, loyal, and replaceable. Especially replaceable. Because the organization never builds a structure around the assumption that people will live. It builds around continuity. The mission continues. The chain continues. The machine continues. That is how institutions like this endure. And this is where I say something the NHA would hate hearing out loud. The strike team model works, but it also reveals the organization's flaw. When you turn people into components, you eventually stop seeing them as people. That is one of the reasons Leviathan 7 was built differently. We learned from the same world. We came out of the same machinery. But our teams are not designed around blind continuity. They're designed around truth, adaptability, and survival without bureaucratic self-deception. The NHA builds units to suppress what threatens secrecy. Leviathan 7 builds units to confront what secrecy created. That difference matters, because one model exists to maintain the illusion of control, the other exists to survive reality. So if you ever wondered how the NHA actually projects force into the dark, this is your answer. A global command structure. Regional oversight, 10 outposts, 12 teams each. 120 strike teams in total, units ranging from 8 to 14 agents, with 12 as the operational sweet spot. Each one shaped for a different kind of nightmare. This is their infrastructure. And the reason the public never sees it is because when strike teams do their job correctly, the world keeps pretending nothing happened. But something always happened. And sooner or later, somebody has to tell the truth about how it all works. I'm Marcus Zane, and now you know what stands between this world and the things beneath it.